Triads are one of the most useful things a guitar player can use in their playing. Using them can completely transform how you play chords and how you improvise over chord progressions. In this video, you will learn how to incorporate them into your playing, the different shapes and inversions you can utilize, how to use them to add texture to your chords, as well as using them in your solos. To actually implement these tips I'm giving you in this video, download my free backing track specifically made for this lesson, as well as a PDF guide that will further explain everything I went over in this video. The guide will show you what chords are in that track, what triads to use, and even a few licks that you can incorporate into those chord changes. Get yours in the description below after watching this video. Alright, so to start, we should learn what triads even are. Triads consist of 3 notes and are 3-note chords. You can find the triad of any chord by taking the root, the 3rd, and 5th interval of that root's scale and put them all together. For a quick example, here is a triad of a C major chord. We have C as the root, E as the 3rd interval, and G as the 5th. Now if we apply this to the guitar, all 3 of those notes are what make up a C major chord. So we have a C, E, G, C again, and E. This open C major shape is what we are used to playing, as well as those bar chord shapes. But what we want to be able to do is play smaller shapes all over the neck so we can spice up those normal chords. So now that we know what makes up a triad, let's take a look into the shapes and inversions that we can utilize. The ones I'll show you today will only be major and minor triads. There will be a part 2 going over the 7th, diminished and augmented triads sometime down the road. Major and minor triads are most commonly used anyway, so let's start out with the major triad. What makes up a major triad is the root, the major 3rd, and the perfect 5th of a major scale. Each type of chord, such as major, minor, and 7th, all have different sets of intervals. We will learn more about that when we get to the minor triads. So let's now get into the 3 inversion shapes. The types of inversions that will be used goes as follows: root position, 1st inversion, and 2nd inversion. Now for all of those inversions, we will also be applying them to different string sets. I know this may seem like a lot, but bear with me here. There are 3 strings per set and a total of 4 sets. So we have the first being E, B, G, the second being B, G, D, the third being G, D, A, and the fourth being D, A, E. Here are the 3 different inversion shapes using the first string set in the key of C major. So starting, we have the root position, which would be the root, 3rd, and 5th. Then we have the 1st inversion, which would be the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. And then we have the 2nd inversion, which is the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. So altogether, we have the root position, 1st inversion, and 2nd inversion. All right, now for the 2nd string set. Here is the root position of C major. We have the root, 3rd, and 5th. Now we have the 1st inversion, which would be the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. Then we have the 2nd inversion, which would be the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. So all of them together, starting with the root position. Now for the 3rd string set, starting with the root position, which would be the root, 3rd, and 5th. Then we have the 1st inversion, which would be the 3rd, the 5th, and the root. Then we have the 2nd inversion, which would be the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. So all of them together, starting with the root position. Now we have the 4th and final string set, starting with the root position. We have the root, 3rd, and 5th. Then we have the 1st inversion, which should be the 3rd, 5th, and root. Then we have the 2nd inversion, which would be the 5th, root, and 3rd. So all of them together, starting with the root position. As you get more familiar with these shapes, try to apply them to other keys. If you are not that familiar with all the notes on the guitar neck, then this might be a little harder for you. So go check out this video I did a couple weeks ago. I talk about the best way to memorize the notes on the guitar neck, and it will give you a much better understanding of the guitar overall. Let's take a look into the minor triads now. The only difference between a major and minor triad is the flat or minor 3rd. For example, in the C major triad, we had the root, major third, and perfect fifth. For the C minor triad, we have the notes C, E flat for the minor third, and then the G. So the C and G are the same, it's just that that third interval is now flat. If you are interested in learning more about intervals and other terminologies that I have said that you may not quite understand, then check out my guitar course page where you can book a private session with me and I can help you understand all of those things. The link is in the description. So here are the 3 inversion shapes for C minor starting on the first string set. So starting with the root position, we have the root, that minor third, and the fifth. Then we have first inversion, which would be the third, fifth, and root. Then we would have the second inversion, which would be the fifth, the root, and the third. So here are all 3 together, starting with the root. Now for the second string set, starting with the root position, the root, third, and fifth. Then we have the first inversion, which is the third, fifth, and root. Then we have the second inversion, the fifth, the root, and the third. Now, quick note, if we compare the root position of C on the second string set, we had this. And since the minor triad is just a flattened third, all we have to do is find where that third is, which would be right here, and bring it down a half step, which brings us our root position of the second string set of C minor. Here's C major, and here's C minor. Now that applies for all the types of inversions. Once you find that major third, all you're gonna have to do is bring it down by 1 half step, and that will give you your minor triad. All right, so here is for the third string set, starting with the root position. We have the root, the third, and the fifth. Here is the first inversion, the third, the fifth, and the root, and the second inversion, the fifth, the root, and the third. Here's all that together, starting with the root position. And now for the fourth string set, starting with the root position, root, third, and fifth. Now for the first inversion, the third, the fifth, and the root. And last but not least, the second inversion, the fifth, the root, and the third. Now here's all that together, starting with the root position. Now that we have a better idea of all these inversion shapes all over the neck, let's use them to highlight basic chords in a progression. In the intro song, what you heard in the beginning was me highlighting those chords using different inversion shapes, and I was following the changes in the progression. You can use any of those inversions on any of those string sets, but you probably will only use the first and maybe the second, only because those regular chords are already taking care of the low end in the song. And to really highlight them, it's best to use higher pitched voicings. I'm gonna play for you again something similar to what I was doing in the intro, and I'm really gonna highlight each chord change. You can practice the same thing by getting your free backing track below. Now for the last thing I'm going to go over is using triads in your solos. This is where triads can be really fun and important, especially if you're playing over a chord progression and you're really not that familiar with what scale shapes you can solo with. If you highlight those chords using these triads, then it's going to seem like you know exactly what you're playing and you're not going to get lost. If you think your solos tend to be a bit dull sounding sometimes, this can really add a whole new level to your improvisation. First things first, learn or figure out what chords are being used in a song or backing track that you're playing to. Having this figured out is the main foundation of building better solos. So how you want to start with this is pretty much the same thing as when you're using them to find chord voicings. But this time we are going to arpeggiate them in between our licks. In this A major backing track, I'm going to start by arpeggiating the first chord in triad form, and in this case would be A, followed by some licks. And as the chords change, I will highlight those changes by using those arpeggiated triads. I will not do this for every single change because 1, some are very quick, and 2, I don't want to overdo it in my solo. If you work out those triad shapes and really start to understand the theory behind them, then you will be using these triads in no time. Make sure to get your backing track that I've been using as an example down in the description, as well as the PDF document that will have all the major and minor shapes, detailed information on the theory behind triads, as well as a few licks to practice with. If you have any other questions or you would like to schedule a private guitar lesson, check out my guitar course page in the description or shoot me an email so we can talk about what it is that you want to get better at. Thanks for watching this week's video. Let me know if there are any topics that you would like me to cover in a future video, and make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you can get notified when part 2 of this video comes out. I'll see you guys next week, and as always, keep on playing.